Hello, hello, hello. Today's video is, without further ado, Lightroom, how to create a beautiful, kind of a bohemian, bright, cohesive look in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm gonna give you my step-by-step process on how I edit my images with this beautiful bohemian look. 99.9% of my images are edited with these exact steps. In Lightroom, I then import them into Photoshop to create just kind of like a finishing look, which I do with all of my images. Not everyone does that. They like to stop with the edits in Lightroom, which is totally fine. If that's you, you can just stop with the video today and enjoy the beachy bohemian look that we're gonna get. And I say beachy because we're using a beachy image. Let's take a look. And this is the image that we'll be editing today. So here is the before, straight out of camera. And after our edits, this is what we will be left with. I think it's funny when I get comments like, oh, all you did was brighten the image. Let me just show you here what that looks like. So here's another image. And I'm going to go to edit. First of all, I'm gonna say this is way more than just brightened. It's still like a quick effect. So I'm glad that you're jumping in and we can cover it. But photo reset edit. So we're gonna go back to the original. This one was a little bit darker. But let me just show you what it looks like when I just up the exposure. Okay, so I'm brightening it. Da-da. I mean, it still looks nice, but it looks nothing like this. If you want to produce beautiful, gorgeous images that are professionally edited, it does not take a lot of work. It just takes the know-how, okay? So this is definitely more than just brightened. Notice how this is, I mean, you definitely need to add contrast back into the image after brightening it because you're losing the contrast. It starts to get hazy and just not very defined. It's very flat and blah. So we want the definition, we want the beautiful color cohesiveness, and it's more than just adding in the contrast and boosting the vibrance. So notice I'm doing that and it still does not quite look like this image. So there's a lot more to it than simply just playing with 2 or 3 dials. Not a whole lot, and I'm gonna walk you through that. Okay, we're just gonna go back to our original image that we were using here. So we're gonna go to photo, reset edit. So we're just gonna go back to the original here. Okay, so the first thing I do is I am gonna kind of like readjust my exposure a little bit. I usually end up changing the exposure more towards the end, but I just wanna bring it up a little bit. I'm gonna up my contrast. And I wanna also mention, we're gonna bring that up to 20, but what I want to mention is that I actually made this into a preset. So I will just quickly apply these to each of my images. I can make another tutorial on how to create a preset for those of you who love quick and easy, fun Photoshop edits and gorgeous. But anyway, so even with a preset, you want to go in and make adjustments. Make it brighter if it needs to be brighter, make it less bright, you know? Move the contrast around, and that'll come with practice. So this is just a very basic general settings that we're going over today. So it's going to fit a lot of images, but always move some of the dials around to your liking for your particular session and the images that you're editing. So highlights I'm going to bring up to 30. Sometimes if I shot like very bright, I'm going to bring those highlights down, but this is not very bright right now. So I'm just going to bring that up. Shadows I'm going to bring up to 89. You'll see where I bring this back. The reason I'm doing this, I'm bringing like shadows up a bunch, is because it helps with the contrast, believe it or not, that I want to add into the image. Okay, so I love deepening the blacks because that darkens like the shadows, the very shadowy part. So I'm able to separate that by brightening the shadows. And then whatever is left over that's still dark, that's going to be darkened by bringing the blacks down. I'm just gonna bring them down to about 44. So if that makes sense. Otherwise, if the shadows were kept as is, I'm bringing the blacks down and it's making it very muddy. So we're separating the shadows, brightening them up quite a bit, and then able to bring down the very, very darkest parts by bringing the black dial down, if that makes sense. I hope it does. But feel free to ask any questions in the comments. Usually I keep my whites kind of like right towards 0. For this particular image, I did bring them down a little bit. It gives it a little bit of a filmy look, which you do get in that Bohemian kind of look. So just already, check that out. Okay, so now we're gonna mess around with the color, and you're going to see a slight difference here with these beachy photos. When you see the big difference is when we have some kind of green in the background, and I'm gonna do that with another tutorial so you can really see like, oh my gosh, it's like when you see the cooler greens instead of the warmer greens. And this also has a lot to do with skin tone. So let's start it with red. So we're just scrolling down to our color mixer panel. Completely skipped over color. I just have my white balance as shot. I do not really bring the vibrance or the saturation up in a lot of my images. I just play with individual colors. Sometimes if I need to fix a white balance issue, then I'll do that for sure. Then I'll use this panel. This image just came out so good. Okay, so reds. I'm going to bring the reds up, and you'll notice that it's going to make their skin tone warmer. But I also like to brighten skin tones, like you'll notice in my images. I mean, they're very bright and airy skin tones as well, very light and bright. So I'm just gonna like go a little bit overboard with this. Notice how it's like really kind of lightening. It is lightening their lips too, but overall their skin tone, that's why you don't want to overdo it. I'm gonna bring that down to about 11, and clicking on the orange, I'm gonna bring that up as well. And again, I'm just gonna overdo it so you can kind of see like what it's doing, but we're gonna go up to about 25 there. Okay, and let's go down to yellow. And I'll show you a real quick before and after with the color panel after we're done, the color mixers. Color mixer panel, got it. Okay, so moving down to yellow, I'm gonna do -80 on saturation. So we're just gonna bring that down. And that really helps with color casts and just getting out like yucky yellows. And it really balances out with the oranges and the reds. So we're just gonna bring the lightness up as well. Notice again how that's kind of changing the photo. Bring that up to about 40. And we're gonna end with green. Notice there are some greens in this image, and this actually yellow and green. Believe it or not, grass, when there's grass in your image, yellow controls like that green color more than green does. You'll find it. Start playing with that in your images and you'll see. Okay, so ending off with green, we're gonna go plus 77 here. And this is just, we'll be able to see what that does to greens when you have an image with more greens, which we'll do in the next tutorial. But really this just came with like playing with the sliders and just seeing what brought more of that like cool, beautiful hue out. And that's where my process began with this. And you might find that some of the images, maybe it's taking away too much green and you want to add some of the green in. This is just a really nice starting point. We're going to bring this last slider up to about 37. Okay, so let's see a before and after. It's not going to be huge on this beach photo, but it, again, all these little things make all the difference. Okay, so before and after. So notice we're getting like a lot more clarity and separation with our subjects and the background there. So it's getting brighter, popping more. Again, if you know my style, it's very, very bright and beautiful. I always, on the optics, I like to enable lens correction because I'm shooting with a 35mm, so there's gonna be a little bit of a bubble kind of distortion. And I went ahead and checked off remove chromatic aberration. I love using the noise reduction. I'm gonna bring that up to about 30. It just kind of smooths out the image, gives it that nice polished look. And this is my basic Bohemian look for my beach photos. I use the exact same settings on all of my images, whether it be like in the forest, beautiful greenery, or in the beach. You'll just be able to see more of a change in the greenery when you have that kind of image versus beach. But again, take a look at this. How amazing is that? Before and after, bam. so much more pretty than simply just upping your exposure, maybe adding in some contrast and adding in the vibrance like we did earlier. I mean, that's just not a beautifully polished image. It was taken beautifully, it can be edited beautifully just as easily. And I'm so glad that you tuned into today's tutorial on a few simple steps on how to create beautiful bohemian images edited in Lightroom. So let me know in the comments what else that you guys want to see. Lightroom related, Photoshop related, photo shoot related. I'm here. I am going to make so many tutorials on all the things, and I'm so happy to be back with you guys. Enjoy.